Hi, it's Mike with AskTractorMike.com. Well, we're going to go out to my Bush Hog today, and I'm going to show you three devices. I don't know what to call them really. They're not options, but three different components of the machine that over the years people have seen me do videos on my Bush Hog, and they've said on all three of these, we see that device you've got on your Bush Hog. How can I get one on my Bush Hog? And the answer is, I'm not sure you can. All three of these were standard on Bush Hog's Squealer series back when I got mine. And kind of a testimony to what a really nice design this Squealer was. And people see these and they're like, I could see an advantage of having exactly what you've got on your cutter on my cutter. And so I'll go back and write them a letter and tell them where it came from, what the background of it is, and then I'll give them the Bush Hog part number. So I wanted to do a video where I show all three. And as far as I know, you can still order maybe all of them from Bush Hog, and if you can't get them from Bush Hog, there may be another source for them. But anyway, let me show you what I'm talking about here. The first one is what's called a Flex Link, and it's this device right here. Now, on most machines, most cutters, you've got the A-frame that sticks up here, and you've got a hole that goes through it, and you put your top link pin through here, and that supports the machine when you lift it. This particular machine's got this, and it's really not anything special. It's just a U-shaped piece of metal that rides around a tube, and as you're going through the field, your top link hooks onto this, so it's not directly pinned to the A-frame. And the advantage of this is if you go through a draw, which you're not supposed to go through a draw because you can put your PTO shaft in a bind, but we all do it. If you're going through a valley, and as you're going down and coming up, this is taking the slack up from the travel of the tractor. But the real thing that really makes it nice, and you'll see I've got a piece of wire here to hold it up, is if you've got one of those Harbor Freight quick hitches where there's a frame that comes up and a hook that comes up under this to pick it up when you're hooking up. And if you've got a quick hitch like that, this is a great little device to have because it puts the top part of the hitch out where the hook can get right under it and lift it up. And so it makes hooking up the attachment a lot easier. So all that really is, again, is just a piece of metal that goes in between your A-frame brackets here and then a stable little tube in the middle. And I'll put the part numbers in the description down below. As far as I know, you can order this from Bush Hog, but it wouldn't be very hard to make one like this. That's component number one. The next two components are back on the PTO, and we'll go there next. So of all the rotary cutters I've ever been around, this is probably the easiest one I've ever found to service the back part of the PTO shaft. And that's because you've got this shield that flips up out of the way. So when you're trying to grease the back point of your PTO, you can just lift that up and get it out of the way. Now, you're supposed to have a linchpin that goes through here to keep it from bouncing up and down. But if you keep it tight, whenever you lift it up, it holds it up in the air. And when you put it down, you really don't need a pin in there. This is a better design than the hard plastic or rubber shields that you see on most cutters. And I'm honestly thinking you see on the new Bush Hogs. This was just in the line for a little while. And I don't know if they still offer the parts for it or not. But they went right after this to a rubber shield that goes around there. And actually, there's two components to this. There's the shield itself right here. And then there's this part right here. And down below, you can see right there is held on with some bolts that go into the gearbox. Now, every gearbox is going to have some kind of a shield back here. And there's going to be holes back here to put it on. And I don't know that those are standard widths But if this would fit your machine, I think you could order it from Bush Hog. But it's two components. It's a part that mounts on the gearbox down below, and then the shield that goes on top. And you could actually build one if you were handy. And then I think the original had a pin that went all the way across here, but what this has now is just a bolt here and a bolt here, and I try to keep those tight, which is kind of a challenge because on a Bush Hog you get a lot of vibration, and so they're kind of a struggle to keep them tight. But it is nice whenever you're servicing your PTO shaft, just flip it up out of the way. So I pulled this shield off and cleaned it up a little bit to kind of show you what it looks like. That part right there is the mounting bracket, and that bolts on right there to the gearbox, and you can see it's got 4 holes there where it bolts on. It only had 2 bolts in it, but the hole in the center is 2 inches, and the inside diameter, or the from center to center, here and here, if you had a bolt here and here, center to center on those would be about 2 1/4 inches. And on the widest spot from there to there, center to center, it'd be about 3 1/4 inches. So if you've got a rotary cutter and you want to know if this shield would work on your machine, measure your bolts there. And because those holes are slotted, I think you could find a place where it would bolt on to any hole design. But if your center to center width is 2 1/4 to 3 1/4, and your center hole is 2 inches, I think you could put this on. Or if you don't want to buy it from Bush Hog, maybe design one of your own. Pretty simple design. Now the final one today is my favorite, and I wish every cutter in the world had this. And there's actually 2 things here that are kind of unique. The first one I'll show you is the Shearbolt. Every cutter will have some kind of driveline protection, so if you hit something that doesn't move, it either slips clutches or it breaks a bolt. Well, this particular machine has a Shearbolt, and you can see it right there. Now, a lot of machines will have a smooth shaft, and they'll have a hole in the shaft that corresponds to a hole in the yoke that goes on the shaft, and that's how you shear the Shearbolt. The problem with that, it's hard to get under there to get to that to replace it, because you will shear them once in a while when you hit something. You hope you do, so you don't damage your drive line. This one is so much easier than most to change because they put the Shearbolt right there. So whenever you hit something and you break the Shearbolt, it's a lot easier to get right in here and change the Shearbolt. And I did a video about how to change the Shearbolt showing how this works. And I'll post a link right here in the upper corner, and you can watch that later if you want to. But that's a really, really nice design because it's out here in the open and real easy to get to. When you shear a bolt, you can get another bolt, put it back through, get everything lined up and tighten it without having to put it through the shaft, and it's just a lot nicer design. But the thing I really like about this, and I'm going to try to show you while I'm holding the camera, is the back part of this PTO shaft is released with a push pin, and you can just take the whole thing off. And again, it's kind of hard to do with holding a camera or a phone, but the whole thing comes off real easy if you've got 2 hands. And because it comes off real easy to get to the grease zerk right here. You just take the whole shaft off, you grease it, and then you put it back on. And I would 1,000 times rather have a design like that than one that didn't come off. And again, a lot of them, especially the ones with a Shearbolt, will be held on with a bolt, but they'll also, a lot of them, you could take the bolt out, and some of them you can pull the shaft off, but on some of them they've got a snap ring around the edge to keep the whole shaft from coming off if you shear the Shearbolt. And you understand why that's a good design, because you don't want the whole shaft to come off if you shear a Shearbolt. But the problem with that, if you want to take it off and grease it and put it back on, you've got to remove that snap ring. And those things can be a bear. So that is something that was offered, and as near as I can tell, Bush Hog had 3 different suppliers of PTO shafts that made that. But if you can get them, just the back part of it, the Shearbolt and then the releasable yoke, you'd have to have a 540 style PTO yoke on the back on your gearbox. If you've got that, you could probably order the back part of this, and for not a lot of money, have a PTO shaft that you could take off and grease. And I hear from a lot of you that that is something you absolutely struggle with, is trying to get the back part of your PTO shaft greased, because some of the manufacturers have PTO shaft grease zerks that are extremely hard to get to. And you can get a right angle grease coupler that'll make it a little bit easier. But the easiest thing to do is just take the whole thing off and grease it that way, and then put it back on. And you're back going again, and you got everything greased in just seconds. But all three of those options, or whatever you want to call them, were standard on the SQ720 Bush Hog when mine was made. And it's testimony to somebody at Bush Hog that was really thinking when they designed those. But I'm gonna, in the description down below, I'm gonna put the part number for this, and that's this part right here, the tube, and that they call it a flex link. And then I'm gonna put the part numbers for the shield, and then I'll put the suppliers of the PTO. And of course, Bush Hog didn't build the PTO; it was built by another company. There's three companies that I think built that. And if you've got a place in your area that repairs PTO shafts, and they're fairly common, and they do work, they're a driveline component. They do work on big trucks, and they do work for people that run off-road Jeeps and stuff like that. They might be able to order this back part and put that on your PTO shaft if you've got that 540 style splined yoke on your gearbox. And you'll absolutely love that. That's the best thing about this machine in my mind. But all of these options, and the fact that people ask about all of them, are testimony to the engineer at Bush Hog, or engineers that designed this machine. And again, I'm not sure that you could still get those on a Bush Hog. I know they've done away with that back shield, and I don't think you can get the push PTO shaft anymore that comes right off. But at the time this one was built, it was ahead of its time, and it was a really nice design. Well, I do appreciate you watching my videos. I'd be honored if you would subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can do that by clicking the mic face icon, and make sure you check the bell so you get notified when I post future videos. Here's a link to my website and the Tractor Fund store with cool things for sale for the tractor owner. It helps support my channel. And here's another couple of videos you might want to watch. Thanks for watching.